What is the most powerful steam locomotive in history? It's a good question. Wait, this sounds familiar. When have I... Oh, right, I did this already. Well, what are we doing here again? Well, if you hadn't noticed, the last time I did this, every single entry, on the first list anyway, was all articulated locomotives. Locomotives with 2 sets of driving wheels. And a few people felt that that was cheating, which, I don't know how much I agree with that, because it's still one locomotive, but, I thought it might be fun anyway, to talk about the really powerful locomotives that didn't have any kind of articulation to help them out negotiating curves or anything. So let's talk about those. Hello, welcome to another episode of History in the Dark. I am your host, Darkness the Curse. And before we begin, as always, thank you so much to my generous patrons, my British rail critics, and of course, my underwater train finders. You are the reason why this content remains so much power. And today, we are going to discuss the most powerful, non-articulated steam locomotives ever. And I do want to stress a couple of things. For one thing, we are again going by tractive efforts, just so we're clear, and I am sorry to everyone who doesn't live in America. I looked. I tried. There isn't a non-articulated locomotive that isn't here that enters the top 5. That I could find anyway. No, not the 9Fs. No, not even the AA-20. There's nothing. Really. I was surprised too. Sorry. But of course you realize that now this means I can do this. USA! 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 We're number one! We're number one! USA! 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 The Union Pacific 9000 class. Yeah, I think this one might have been obvious to some of you, but I don't think you expected them to be this low on the list. The 9000 series was a group of 88 steam locomotives built by ALCO for Union Pacific between 1926 and 1930. They were 412 twos, 12 driving wheels, in a rigid frame, like a crazy person. Union Pacific was actually the only operator of this particular wheel arrangement, and as such, they are sometimes nicknamed just the Union Pacific type, which is pretty on the nose, but I'm going to call them 9000s. They were meant to increase the speed of freight trains in flat country, though they were known to be maintenance hogs, as they used an inside third cylinder that drove the second driving axle between the frames, and there was no inside valve gear at all. ALCO had actually obtained permission to use the conjugated valve gear invented by Sir Nigel Gresley. His system used 2 hinged levers connected to the outer cylinder's valves to operate the inner cylinder's valve. As a result, this makes the 9000 class the largest locomotives to ever use the Gresley gear. Due to the whole rigid frame thing and the fact that they were worried about them being able to negotiate curves, the original plans called for the third and fourth driving axles to be blind, but ALCO did incorporate lateral motion devices on the first and sixth axles, and that made that completely unnecessary. They actually could turn alright, all things considered, at least on Union Pacific trackage. But as steam locomotives, they couldn't last forever, and they were retired between 1953 and 1956. Out of the 88 that were built, only 1 survived to the preservation. The prototype of the class, actually, number 9000. She still sits at the Railway and Locomotive Historical Society's museum at the Los Angeles County Fairplex in Pomona, California. But how powerful were they? Well, they were known to achieve roughly 96,646 pounds of force in terms of tractive effort. That's 429.9 kilonewtons. An impressive display to be sure, but this is only number 5, which means that the rest of this list can pull harder than the 9000s? And yeah, they can. The Pennsylvania Railroad Class Q2. Now, hold the phone. Wait a minute, Darkness. You lied to us. You said there'd be no articulated locomotives on this list. Look at that! That's 2 sets of driving wheels, and yes, this is a 4-4-6-4 wheel arrangement, and that must make me a big ol' liar, but I'm not! Because yes, there are 2 sets of driving wheels, but this is not an articulated locomotive. The Q2s were duplexes. Despite having 2 different sets of drivers, they were in a rigid frame, so by the rules I've set for this particular list, they still count. And they were, in fact, the largest non-articulated locomotives ever built, and the most powerful locomotives ever static tested, producing 7,987 cylinder horsepower. They were considered the most successful duplex type. That's because they had some design features that mitigated the issues of wheel slip that duplexes were generally known to suffer from. In the Q2's case, they had an automatic slip control mechanism that reduced power to whichever set of drivers happened to be slipping. They were an improved version of the previous Q1, which was a single prototype that did not work very well at all. And they were viewed as a success, but with dieselization on the horizon, they of course wound up being withdrawn. All out of service by 1951, and not a single one of the 26 was preserved at all. But how powerful were they? Well, by default, they had 100,816 pounds of force. However, they had a booster added, and with that, they were capable of delivering 115,816 pounds of force. An extra 15,000, in case you can't do math. Either way, they were very strong, but they just didn't last very long because of the diesels. They were expensive to operate, due to heavy maintenance requirements. So, yeah, they all got destroyed. The Pennsylvania Railroad I1sa class. Pansy, you keep showing up on a lot of my lists lately. I don't know how to feel about that. Not that I'm complaining, it's just suspicious. Please let someone else show up. That'd be nice. The I1S's were a class of steam locomotives that were the largest class of 2 10-0 decapods built in the United States. Nearly 600 of these locomotives were produced between 1916 and 1923, 598 to be precise. 123 were built at Altoona Works, and 475 were built at Baldwin. They remained in service until 1957, only being replaced by diesels at the very last minute. They were nicknamed Decks, or Hippos, because they had very large fat boilers. I like hippos. They were very successful in freight service, and even their default form, the I1S, was very powerful, but the I1SA's increased tractive effort to an astounding 102,027 pounds of force. That's 453.84 kilonewtons. Sadly, despite being so prevalent, only one managed to survive into preservation. She is number 4483, and she is an I1SA. She's currently owned by the Western New York Railway Historical Society. They're hoping to eventually move her to the Heritage Discovery Center in Buffalo to sit on public display, though that hasn't happened as of the making of this video. She does seem to be in fair shape, so I imagine they'll take good care of her, as she is the last of her kind. The last hippo. The Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Class M-4, and the Bessemer and Lake Erie H1s. Now hold the phone, why am I putting 2 different types of locomotives from 2 different railways on this list? That's not fair. That's cheating again. Darkness, you're nothing but a dirty, filthy, rotten cheater! We are gonna leave mean comments about it, which will backfire in our face as more comments means that the algorithm will share this video more. But we haven't thought that through, because we want to say nasty things to you. Well, I do have a very good reason for putting both these locomotives on the list, and in the same spot, because not only are they tied for tractive effort by most sources, but the reason they're tied is that they're basically the same locomotive. Both of them are 2 10-4s, a wheel arrangement known as the Texas. The Texas is basically just a Berkshire, but with an extra set of driving wheels, because they just needed more power, I guess. Why not? The M4s were built in 1927, and 18 of them were constructed in total. They actually referred to them as the Colorados. and they were considered fairly successful. So successful that the Bessemer and Lake Erie wanted to outright copy them. Yes, the original prototype of the H1A was a proof of concept to duplicate the M4 engines. As a result, the designs had very, very, very little differences. To date, there are no M4s left, all having been scrapped, though there is one of the H1s left, number 643. Glenn Campbell bought her and stored her. She was actually purchased by the Age of Roundhouse Museum in Sugar Creek, Ohio, back in 2019, and she's in the process of being moved, piece by piece, from McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania. So how powerful were these Texas types? Well, like I said, they're about tied at 102,106 pounds of force. But they're not number one, though number one is still a Texas! So, there's that. Santa Fe, number 5,000, otherwise known as Madam Queen. I love Madam Queen. She is royalty. She is a unique member of her own class. And as I said, she's a 210-4 Texas. And she served as the prototype to all further 210-4 locomotives used by the railroad. She was built by Baldwin in 1930, and she was incredibly successful. She could pull 15% more tonnage in 9% less time, burning 17% less coal per 1,000 gross ton miles, when compared to the 3800 series 210-2s. But due to the Great Depression, Santa Fe adopted a policy to avoid capital expenditures, and when they got the next round of 210-4s delivered in 1938, they were given a different class outside of Madam Queen, as they had been given some refinements to improve efficiency. So Madam Queen remains the only literal monarch from Santa Fe. But how powerful is she? Oh yes, she is still around, but more on that in a second. Well, her tractive effort is 113,087 pounds of force, or 503.04 kilonewtons. Like the absolute queen she is! As for her preservation, well, she served the railway faithfully for many years, putting in 1,750,000 miles of service. She was retired in 1957, and on April 17th, she was donated to the city of Amarillo, Texas. She was placed on outdoor static display at the Santa Fe station. In August of 2005, she was moved by the Railroad Artifact Preservation Society to a new location in Amarillo, and they wanted to construct a building to house her, but that so far hasn't seemed to have happened yet, and it's unclear what's going on with her exactly. In July of 2016, the city of Amarillo did propose selling her, but based on unverified sources, this is a lot of hearsay going on, they seem to have rejected the possibility of actually selling her to someone who might, I don't know, be able to take care of her, or possibly even put her back under power, because frankly, I think she deserves it. I'll be real with you guys, one of my dreams is to restore a steam locomotive. I want to open my own restoration shop for historical artifacts, but I want it to be large enough to handle locomotives too at some point. That dream's a few ways off, as I don't make nearly enough money to invest in a business at this point, but in terms of locomotives that I want to restore, sitting at the very top, at the number one spot, is Madam Queen, because she's sitting, just sitting right there, and she's the most powerful, non-articulated steam locomotive in history. You're just sitting on her, just hanging out, not even really taking care of her. Side rods are starting to rust. Like, either restore her, put her in a safe position, or sell her to someone that will actually do either of those things. Fire up Madam Queen, you cowards! Do you not see this? Do you not know what you have just hanging about? You are a city council. You can't tell me you're that busy, because I know what y'all do, and it ain't much. You put her back under steam. Now, let the world behold her, and her unspeakable power. Witness her! Cowards! And with that, a special thank yous to all my underwater train finders. Some Dude 267, Orange Glass, Benjamin Owens, Panzer Kitsune 131-232, Josh Johnson, Metal for Life Guy, Anzac A1, Arthur Roy, Tommy Rossini, Lord Captain Von Thrust III, Joshua Long, Brian, Jack Carson's Railroad Videos, Hayden DeGrow, Master of None, Lord Hoth 444, That Guy with a Beard, Mark Holding, Murder Drone Stall, A Person 723, DM Trouble Typhoon, Alfonso Lapuche, Royal Hudson 2860, Isurfer 1405, Charles Kwiatkowski, Matthew Wolf, Ohio Trucker 1, Mr. Sleepy, Matt Weaver, Alaric Jaspers, Tom Redlion, NS Productions 8104, Hannah Bird, Hendrick Motorsports Fan 5, Wheeljack 8401, Rescues Greyhounds, Dr. Racer 78, and The Baxter. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.